Now, inking. Inking is one of the highlights of liquid text, no pun intended. So we'll talk about how you can draw ink anywhere. We'll talk about ink-based highlights. We'll talk about ink links and how you can connect anything with ink. We'll go back to another document here. All right. So the first point about inking is that ink works everywhere. So as you know, of course, you can write on your document itself. You can, of course, also write in the workspace. So if you haven't tried that, that works great also. You can also write on top of your excerpts. So for example, I can circle some points, underline some points, and so on. This is actually great with things like diagrams where you can annotate them, maybe not in the original text if you don't want, but you can annotate them in the excerpt form that you've pulled out. Okay, now next we have highlights. You can, of course, go click the highlight button here, and you can make ink-based highlights, which, unlike text highlights, don't necessarily have to follow the flow of the text. Now, of course, we get to ink links. Ink links are one of the most wonderful things in liquid text. I've already showed you a little bit about them. As I demonstrated earlier, ink links can be used to connect, for example, two different documents. Simply draw a line, and it creates that live link between them. And you see the links even kind of bend around corners, which is just great. So wherever you are, you can always tap one end, and it brings the other end back up. Now, of course, ink links can also go between documents and the workspace. So for example, I can create an ink link like this, and it connects between my document and my workspace. And again, no matter where I am, I can simply click one end of it on the document, and it brings me to the corresponding end in the workspace. Now, ink links also, and I didn't show you this, ink links also work great for different pages. Let's load something a little bit longer here. We'll open the best practices document again. Okay, now let's suppose I want to show a relationship between the text on this page and the diagram a couple pages down. Well, I can use an ink link for this as well. So let's say, and you see what's happened. It's created a cross-page ink link even within the same document. Tap one end, crunches the page together to let me see the other. And of course, you can also create ink links just within the workspace itself as well. So I can, for example, draw an ink link from one excerpt to another. And you see it can start to make almost a form of, very much a form of mind map, where I can tap one end, let's say, of one link, and it brings me to whatever is on the other end of that link. So it's a great way to navigate around a large and complex workspace if you happen to be using one. Ink links also work between different workspaces. So this is previewing something that's a couple minutes further down in the presentation. But for example, if I've created a second workspace, which I'll tell you more about in a moment, but if, for example, I have a second workspace here, and let's just view them in parallel, I can also create an ink link from one workspace into another. And so, for example, if I'm in the first one, I can click the link, of course, and it brings me back to the corresponding location in the second workspace. So again, we love this. You can really connect anything to anything, capture all the connections that you see, and build that representation of the relationships in your head now on your computer. Okay, so this is inking. Again, we talked about drawing ink anywhere, ink-based highlights, and ink links.